Long haul truckers, what's the creepiest slash most paranormal thing you've seen on the road at night? Maybe a bit off the mark, but it still scared the crap out of me. I was headed west on I-76 here in Denver, just cruising along at about 70 miles per hour. Out of nowhere, I saw a massive, almost solid cloud of what looked to be dirt coming at me. I'd say it was at least 20 feet wide and 10 feet tall. I scanned ahead of me, but couldn't see any vehicle it could have came from. With nowhere to go, I slowed down and took the hit, hoping there wasn't anything big enough and air to come through the windshield or jack up my truck owner/operator. It was pretty loud as I smashed through it. The instant it hit, I knew it wasn't dirt though. I immediately hit the washers because I couldn't see a damn thing through all of the carnage. My windshield was painted with guts. Turns out it was bees. Freaking huge bees that sounded like rocks when they hit. I can't even imagine seeing that swarm if I was walking. They would kill the crap out of anything in their path. Hi, I'd like to buy this movie plot from you. Ada right. Great B movie material. I was driving near Las Vegas at around 3 AM. I had been following a few black subs along the highway for a good hour or so. They had Nevada plates that were single digit numbers in order. 1, 2, 3. Suddenly they all pulled off the highway down a dirt path. There was no mile marker or cactus that would indicate a path there. It was just dirt. After pulling off the road, they all turned their lights off. I didn't stick around. It was creepy. They were absolutely going out to a base or testing site. There are a bunch around Vegas. And I bet they feel badass doing that. Man, we freaked that truck driver out. Now let's autopsy us some aliens. A good friend of mine told me this story years ago. He is the stereotypical old big bad trucker. I've seen some weird stuff with him while driving in South Texas along the border. He never batted an eye, but while telling me this story he had goosebumps and a concerned expression, which from this guy is about the equivalent of a trembling lip and shit-stained pants. I'll tell this story in the first person as he told it to me. Years ago in the late 90s, I was on my way from the house, Central Texas, heading to Laredo to pick up a load. It was early morning, around 4 or 5. I had just come off a string of days at home, so I know I wasn't tired. I'm on one of those 2-lane winding roads in the absolute middle of bumfuck nowhere, when I see something on the side of the road at the edge of my high beams. At first I just thought it was roadkill, as is usually the case. As I get closer, I see that it is roadkill, and there's someone crouching over the deer carcass. I remember thinking either this guy's taking the antlers as a trophy, or he's fucking sick. As I got closest to I can now see that this guy's eating the fucking deer. He's pulling chunks of meat from the stomach and bringing them up to his face. At this point he stops mid-motion and looks up at me, not at my truck, but at me. It stands up, and that's when I see that it's fucking huge, brown, and covered in hair. I remember thinking at this point, oh fuck, this thing is standing on the tiny shoulder looking at me. By this point, maybe 3 seconds have passed, and I'm about to the point in the road he's standing at. I didn't even think of stopping. In fact, I'm starting to lay on it and get the hell out of there. As I'm passing it, it's looking at me. Again, not at the truck. It's looking through the driver's side windshield at me. He obviously has the intelligence to know that there's a driver in here and knows where I'm sitting. As I start to pass him, I can still see its head above the hood of an old needle nose beat. Old truck design, where the hood goes straight out from the windshield. Known for being tall and difficult to see around. This thing is fucking giant. I remember seeing what looked like human intelligence in its eyes. It scares the shit out of me. Sorry for the wall of text. It's a story worth sharing though. TLDRBIGFOOT. Eating a deer on the side of road. I've been scrolling through this thread for a good 45 minutes and I've seen a lot of similar stories about some 8-foot figure who looked like Bigfoot with human intelligence. And here's the catch. They all say it was in Laredo. New Bigfoot movie coming out with an EA tie-in video game. My dad is a truck driver, and about 13 to 15 years ago, while resting at the side of the road, he woke up in the morning seeing that his entire trailer was robbed empty. My dad's a heavy sleeper, but his cargo could not have been stolen without at least a forklift, and everyone would have woken up by a forklift and loading a trailer. My dad suspects the robbers used a pump to get some kind of chloroform into his cabin to make sure he couldn't wake up. Thank God nothing happened to your dad. My great uncle was a long-haul trucker, and he swears that one time he was driving down the road to see 2 guys pull a rolled up carpet out of the trunk of their car and throw it in the river. Whether that's true or not I don't know, but it's still creepy nonetheless. It was probably true. My friend, his wife, and several neighbors last year saw a large car drive to the river at the end of their street in Indianapolis and dump a girl's body, all in broad daylight at like 2 p.m. Of course the car sped away. My friend and another neighbor run up to the side of the river, and it's definitely a girl/woman's body. Said he wanted to throw up, and did later on. This girl/woman had obviously been murdered. They got the license plate, but do not know if the people were ever caught. Dude, you wanna call your friend, so we can get some closure over here? I'm a log truck driver in the Pacific Northwest. We go up into the woods on logging roads and haul logs back from the loggers to sawmills. We start work very early in the morning, 2 to 5 a.m. So it's nighttime obviously. One of my co-workers pulled away from the job and started down the logging road. After a couple miles, after the load had settled a bit, he decided to pull over and throw his remaining wrappers around the load. As he is tying his load down, he looked back and saw a mountain lion watching him from 10 feet off of the end of his trailer. He slowly backed up to his driver door and got in. By the time he looked in his mirror, the lion had disappeared. Not paranormal, but it's damn sure creepy. We see lions and bears fairly often out there, but to be that close and out of the truck, we face different obstacles up in the woods than highway drivers. Remember, it's not the mountain lions you can see that are dangerous. It's the ones you can't see. Okay, so here is a spook for you, and to this day I still have no idea WTF. So I was in the VA/MD area, and had a lot of work related sites ranging from downtown Baltimore to Virginia Beach and all around. Friday wrapped up, and I hit the road to some social arrangements I had made for the weekend. Spent the weekend with friends out in various parts of VA, got dragged off to other places even further out. The usual weekend fun times. It's late Sunday night when I have to leave, or I'm not going to be able to get home in time to start my, thankfully late afternoon, Monday. I'm fully rested. I didn't do any drinking. I'm not into drugs. On the highway at about 3 a.m. in the middle of bumfuck nowhere between Roanoke and DC. Absolutely nobody around. I'm cruising along in the left lane simply because nobody else is around. No headlights for the past hour. No tail lights either. No road lamps either. It's dark. It's mildly damp. It's foggy. I have the music up. I'm feeling good. All is fine. And then I just happen to look to the left and there is a fucking dog barking at me. A German Shepherd. In a car passenger seat. Somewhat blue glow from the instruments inside the car, and it's got its face to its window and it's barking its head off at me. I get a good hard look at it, too, because at first my brain is not registering cop car. Dummy, I'm doing 90 plus in a 75. I promptly have the oh shit moment when the dog, the instruments, the white Crown Vic/light bar all click in my brain. After a second hard look, I put my foot on the brakes and start slowing down hard but safe to pull over. I even put my blinker on to start shifting lanes over to the right to pull over because, wait, there is no shoulder on the left side of this road. I look back to my left, where there is still no shoulder/room for another car, and it's just gone. No trace. I slammed my brakes and stopped in the middle of the fucking highway, flipped on all my light bars and even looked around with my handheld spot. There was nothing. No tail lights. No headlights. No engine sounds. Nothing. There are no other tire marks in the damp but mine. And I can see for a nice long distance both ways, too. Nothing. My vehicle had great visibility, and a lot of extra lighting, off-road sub with the trimmings. There is no possible way somebody pulled a sneaky, let alone drove that fast on wet sloped grass and rocks on my left side. So, yep, there you have it. Ghost cop and his dog didn't like me speeding, apparently. It was a warning to slow down cause you were gonna crash. They saved your life. My dad has several stories from hauling logs in Idaho and driving trucks through Utah and Nevada. My favorite is from actually just in his pickup going through Utah. He said there was a light keeping pace with him out in the desert on a moonless night. It kept pace for a minute before it disappeared, and his truck turned off. He stopped and turned it on, and pulled off at the next diner. The folks in the diner called it a common occurrence. The creepiest is when he was hauling logs in Idaho and was coming down from near Coeur d'Alene area during a snowy winter night. He was putting on chains before heading down steep grade and said all of the hair stood up on his body. It felt like there was something watching him. Halfway down the switchbacks he saw a large figure standing on a 20-foot tall embankment. As he got closer it jumped down, and the shoulders were as tall as the cab. In a single bound it leaped down, and then leaped over to the other side of the embankment. At the time he thought it was a Sasquatch. Now he says it was probably a demon trying to make him crash. He didn't stop to remove the chains until he was well away from the mountain. Alright, That second story is really weird. I went to a boarding school that was in the woods in Idaho, in Bonners Ferry, which was like an hour or more from Coeur d'Alene. In one of the dorms, there was this 8-foot shadowy figure that would just stare at you sleeping from across the room. The ceilings weren't that high, and there a hunch to it, like the giant in Big Fish. I was there for 2 years. I saw it about a year in, but new kids on their first night saw it. Everyone knew. And if you got transferred to that dorm, then you were warned. In a joking way. We were kids. It's been 15 or so years, and I still just got goosebumps writing that out. Of course. Story going around that it was just a really tall staff member named Jeff that committed suicide, and he was just making sure you were asleep. So that was its name, Jeff. There's something fucked up out there. I would tell more stories, but it's like telling someone you saw a UFO. You might believe them somewhat, but there's always that suya you did to it. This is a really crazy coincidence, so on my end hearing something like that. Let's hear 'em. Alright. My first month in, I was in a different dorm. Top bunk. In the middle of the room. I was taking a nap, with my arm hanging off the side. I don't remember what I was dreaming about, but this I remember clear as day. Just a cat hissing and then screaming. And someone bit my finger. Hard. Hard enough to bruise under my nail. I was totally alone in the dorm, and I was sleeping on my stomach, arm dangling, so it wasn't me doing it in my sleep. The dorms were separated by one half wall, and I got up, checked it out thinking someone ran over there and was just screwing with me, and then there was a bang on the wall from by my bunk. Again. Totally alone. I can't speak for this, because it was in the girls' dorm, but they had a little girl that would run through the bathroom screaming and leaving behind wet footprints. Their dorm was by our little pond, and when we were out there, some girls came out screaming and towels saying it happened. A female staff went and checked it out, and I remember when she came out, she had that expression that's kind of like a half smile that said I don't know, and I can't explain it, and she was like, yeah, there's a child's footprints in there. I believe you. Once I woke up with a perfectly symmetrical half-circle bruise on my face right under my lip in high school and literally was flabbergasted. My mom and I searched everything in my room to see if it would have a similar shape. It had no pain associated with it, but it was the weirdest thing ever. I also have a lot of paranormal things happen around me, so I've just come to accept them lol. Plus a family friend's mom tells this creepy story of a demon attacking her in her locked bedroom. He bit her on the back of the thigh and her kids finally broke down the door after hearing her scream and cry. They found her alone huddled in the corner with a big ass almost animal-like bite mark on the back of her leg. I'm a stand-up comic. I often refer to my profession as being a trucker with jokes. Near the north end of mainland Michigan, I saw a car stopped on the side of the highway. We hadn't seen a car for a while. It was 2 a.m. I commented to my buddy, poor bastard. But as we passed the car, the lights came on, and it got back on the road. Odd timing. And then, it was gaining on us. I told my friend to speed. He did. He sped more, and the car kept closing in. We were doing 120 and this guy was catching up to us. We saw an exit with a hotel, so we took it, and drove right in front of the building, where it was well lit, and we could see the front desk clerk. The car got off that exit too. It drove into the hotel parking lot, then turned around, and got back on the highway. I'll never know what that guy wanted from us. I'm fine with that remaining a mystery. R/let's not meet. Creepiest. Driving I-40 I-30 through Texas and Arkansas, I would see what looked like animals/faces popping out of the bushes, but longer than a glance proved nothing there. They had just paved the highway, and there was hardly any traffic. I was dead tired. It was super dark. Highway hypnosis, I suppose. Paranormal. When I went to local driving, my route ran near an air reserve base in Indiana, so you'd see planes and helicopters pretty often. One night, about 2 a.m., I was headed to pick up another load when I saw a bright green light in the corner of my windshield. It was too low to be an aircraft. It moved pretty slowly, then darted and I lost sight of it behind some trees I drove by. Typical I saw a UFO shit. But I still think it was just a helicopter or a jet that I saw at the prefect angle that turned after a ticky off. The jet pilots have broken the sound barrier over town a couple times in the past. Sonic boom. So a jet flying abnormally isn't necessarily out of the realm of possibility. Just batshit crazy. Driving south on I-75 in the winter in Ohio, I witnessed a compact car like a Cobalt or similar get on the on-ramp to merge into I-75 north and lost control. They went sideways, fell at least 6 feet off the ramp, and onto the shoulder of the interstate landing on all 4 wheels. Spun 360 degrees, and then proceeded to merge into traffic like it was fucking nothing. Blue. my fucking mind. The CB radio was going fucking nuts for about 5 minutes. Holy shit, who else just fucking saw that, etc. On I-75. That place is a wreck magnet area. I'm not the least bit surprised that happened. I drove by a marsh every night when I was going home from work. One night I saw a car pulled over with hazards on. Dude was head to toe covered in blood. No crash, no injury, just covered in blood. Maybe he just had one hell of a bloody nose. My dad told me and my brothers this story when we were growing up, and it's always stuck with me, particularly on long drives when I'm feeling a bit sleepy. The first time I remember hearing it was after I asked him if angels were real. I was probably 7 or 8 years old. He drove trucks decades ago, before I was born, and before labor laws around limits and brakes were more standard. I'm assuming it's different now. He'd fairly regularly accept calls that would extend his shift to where he was driving 24, 36 hours, or more without a break longer than a quick bathroom or fast food stop. My dad has a pretty mathematical brain. He's the type to make up logic puzzles out of something totally mundane just for fun. Whenever we were driving around town, he'd regularly ask me things like how long would it take us to get from home to the store if we were going 30 miles per hour but had to stop for 5 minutes in the middle because a family of kittens were crossing the road, etc. He'd come up with similar equations for himself while he was driving solo that involved things he was seeing like the odometer, mileage markers, the time, and then he could test his speed based on the equation, etc. One night after having already driven a particularly long day, he noticed his eyes getting droopier and the whole roll down the window and blast the music up thing didn't seem to be helping much. It was a rainy night on a pretty windy mountain road without a shoulder to pull over safely, so he started doing those logic games out loud to keep alert and awake. He was saying something to the effect of I just passed mile marker 146, so what time will it be when I reach 200 if I'm going 55 miles per hour? Then he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and felt his head do the nod jerk thing which woke him up with a gasp. He opened his eyes to see he was driving straight towards mile marker 158, which would have sent his whole truck tumbling down around a mass mountain ravine. He was able to correct the course safely back, but it was a matter of seconds between that reality and certain death. He insists to this day that he slept through 12 miles of windy mountain road going 60 plus miles per hour, only to wake up right at the last moment between life and death. The story usually ends with him tearing up saying, I don't know if there's angels, but I know there's something bigger going on in this universe than our human brains have been able to understand yet. If I wouldn't have woken up right when I did, you kids wouldn't be here today, and that's something that feels pretty close to spiritual. Jesus, take the wheel while I grab a nap for the next 12 miles KTHX. Oh fuck, we didn't have these back in my day. Why did you ask for my help? Fuck. I was 23. My newly married husband and I decided driving team would be a fun adventure after college, rather than jumping into the 925. I was down in Arizona, on a long stretch of nothing about 4 AM, when a guy pulled up next to me waving his CB. I never left mine on. Listening to those guys BS was irritating. I turned on my CB, and he told me I had a blown tire. I thanked him, figuring I would stop at the next truck stop. He kept harassing me to pull over and check my tire for a good 40 miles. I finally got to a next town and pilot truck stop, got out and checked my truck. No blown tires anywhere. No clue what that guy would done to me, but so glad I trusted my gut and didn't stop. Not paranormal, but I have plenty of stories as a young woman on the road. By reading all these comment threads I've come to realize how much I need to learn from life. Somebody says something like that to me, I'm stopping instantly. It's a little different in one of those trucks. You've got 18 wheels. You can go with one flat or blown/missing tire for a while. Now, in your car, you'd notice something was wrong right away, but always trust your gut and don't stop until a well-lit, populated area. Saw a clown staggering down an alley in the city, back facing us, while we were coming to a stoplight at like 1 AM. Looked like he was still blowing balloons or masturbating. Not seeing his face made it more ominous. I'm not sure if it's either really creepy or sad. Maybe he was on his way to abduct children, or maybe he was blind drunk after a long day. Wow, balloons is a lucky guy. I'm a truck driver in the UK. Was driving through rural Scotland one night going down a country lane. All of a sudden I start to see flashing lights come through the trees. Lights of all colors flashing through the trees and causing some really freaky looking shadows on the road. I'm not a believer of aliens or anything, but my first thought was UFOs. Safe to say I put my foot down and got out of there. Found out the next day it was rape happening in a field, but at the time it didn't half scare me. What time of year was it? When the haggis first start tumbling off the hill we have various dancing light rituals. The lights scare them into running the wrong way round the hill and causes them to roll down into the hands of kids waiting to catch their first one. /s. I was coming back home from a trip from Michigan and I saw these people wearing cult-like robes, one in town, one on a highway, and one in a park, all staring at me. Did you approach the dog park? You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to acknowledge it either. The council would like to see you for education purposes. Myself and 2 friends had to drive from Laredo, TX to Baton Rouge, LA one night in my Ford van. It was about 2 AM. There is a particularly long and dark section of highway just outside Laredo, no buildings, towns or lights for about 50 miles. I was in the right lane coming up on a truck, and pulled out into the left passing lane. As I was slowly overtaking this long truck, my peripheral vision caught a sudden movement of this big truck towards the right shoulder. I saw the truck was swerving to avoid hitting a person dressed in all white face, whose arms were folded across the chest and eyes were closed as they walked across the highway. I swerved to the left and barely missed this ghostly looking person with my passenger mirror. Can still remember seeing that the eyes were closed. That's how close we came to hitting this person. Laredo TX. You could have stopped right there, and I would have agreed on the creepy part. No need for further explanation once Laredo is mentioned. Why is that? I have worked on Laredo a few times there, and the whole town has an uneasy feel to it. Everything seems calm, but you know a lot of shady things are happening. Waco, Texas is similarly eerie. Not a trucker, but I've driven cross country a few times. Have 2 freaky things that have happened. First, middle of the night with a buddy and we pulled off to the side of the highway to take a piss and switch drivers. Nobody else around on the road. I walk to the side, pitch black, whip it out, and start to pee. My buddy is just stretching his back, or whatever. I heard something in the woods shake a tree. No other way to describe it. A tree about 30 feet away shook. Then I hear something big crashing through the woods coming straight for us in the car. My buddy and I don't even say anything. He dives in the driver's side and I jump through the passenger window. Pants still down. He floors it out of there. Legs and pants dangling outside. Never did see anything in the rear view mirror, but there was something out there coming at us. My buddy likes to say he heard me stop peeing when that tree shook. Second, I was solo somewhere in West Virginia. Again middle of the night. I got off an exit. One of those long curvy ones. I saw lights before I got off and assumed it was exit stuff. Or maybe even construction. Get to the exit and it's not construction. It's a ton of Army or National Guard guys. The exit was lit up brighter than daytime. So many lights set up pointing everywhere. The Army guys were completely decked out. Gas masks on and assault rifles. They were sprinting around. One guy at the corner was frantically waving me through to get back on the highway. I gunned it out of there, looked in the news later, and didn't see anything. No idea what was going on that night. Do you happen to remember what part of WV or what interstate? I live on the MD/WV border and there are a few military places and training centers around. There is also a research facility owned by the Navy, so if you were near one of those places I might be able to give you possible answers. Can we hear these possible answers? I'm really curious about this. There is a research facility that has had multiple nitroglycerine explosions over the years in Short Gap, WV. There is an NSA listening facility in Sugar Grove, WV. The NSA facility used to be a Navy base and there was a small town around it. Now it is pretty much deserted all, except the NSA guys. It's one of those places Google Maps has superimposed different scenery on top of what's actually there. Then there's a place further south of Charleston off the Kanawha River that I got lost driving one time and 3 heavily armed MPs told me I was trespassing and then escorted me until I was back on the interstate. I've never been able to find out what that place was, but I can show you on a map if you'd like. Oh damn. Ballistics laboratory would be a pretty plausible explanation. That's crazy. I would post a Google Maps link, but then Dr. Evil could find it. Not a long haul trucker, but thought this would fit here. Also on mobile, so sorry for format. My mom, sister and I were on our way to a baseball game of mine during my junior year of high school. This was in northern New York, so spring got a little chilly at times. The main road we took stretched about 35 miles, and was nothing but cornfields and tree lines. We hit a stretch of the road that was super foggy for no reason, so my mom slowed down to a proper speed. We finally reached the end of the fog and we all looked to the left to see where we were. About 50 yards from the road was a man and woman in what appeared to be wedding clothing from at least 100 years ago. Man wearing a big top hat and the woman wearing a very old looking white dress, holding hands with their backs to us walking towards the woodline. We drove past, and I just remember the silence in the car until my mom said, "What the fuck was that?" Till this day, whenever we are together, and one of us tells the story we all get goosebumps. Amish? Something was definitely Amish. Not a trucker, but I was driving through Nevada on a long ride trip, about 3 AM. Sun barely starting to peek out. My sister was asleep in the passenger seat and my parents asleep in the back seat. So it was just me, on a straight stretch of highway in the middle of the desert. I was exhausted and extremely bored from the lack of scenery when suddenly, directly in front of me, up in the pale sky, there was a flash of green and a green meteor carved towards the horizon, before flashing green again and disappeared. At first I thought it was a UFO or something, but I later read meteors can burn green if they have copper in them. Now I think fondly back on that meteor. My family was asleep for it, no one around for miles. I like to think that it was just for me. I saw a baboon in San Saba, Texas crouched down next to the road. He lifted something to his mouth and I saw nothing but fangs. So out of place that it gave me goosebumps. One of the locals explained that a lot of fake ranchers will keep exotic animals, and when they grow aggressive or go in heat they will cut them loose. A few years ago some animal rights activists managed to release thousands of mink from a farm next to a large road. At night, the road was more blood than tarmac 4 miles. Remains everywhere and don't even get me started on the smell. Not a trucker, but I saw some guys wearing Buddhist orange monk robe while rope lifting something like a sign to a pole on the side of highway. The next day I didn't see any sign, pole or anything. I'm sure I'm not wrong, because the location is near the highway exit I usually take every day. Besides, why they're wearing monk robe rather than construction apparel confuses me. Goddamn monks and their overpass advertising. A friend of my cousin was a long-haul trucker. He was making a delivery across the country and was in a hardly used dirt stretch of a rural route. Since the road wasn't exactly peachy he had to drive slowly. He sees another truck slowly approaching from the opposite direction, and he sees the truck is the same as his. Since this isn't fairly uncommon, he didn't think much of it, but as the other one grew closer he decided to honk in recognition of having the same kind of truck. The other one replies and all is good. That is, until they narrowly and very slowly had to pass one another. He turned to look at the driver and he saw himself. Not a reflection, not a similar person, but his exact same copy, same clothes, same hat, same red beard, staring at him. They passed each other, and that was that. He told me he'd seen very weird things, but that was the moment he decided to stop being a trucker. I bet you his doppelganger was also pretty freaked out too. This is my father's story and he wasn't a long-haul trucker, but rather a 18-year-old gas station attendant in the late 70s, and without a certain long-haul trucker I probably wouldn't be here. The gas station was 24 hours and my dad was the only one working the night shift, 11 to 7 I think. A guy comes in and just gives him the creeps. Seems sketchy. He was wearing tight jacket/pants and you could tell he had something in his pants under the jacket. It was during the summer and was warm, so why is he wearing a jacket to begin with? It was later confirmed he was on drugs. A lot of truck drivers used this station as it was the only one open 24 hours for a long stretch of the highway. They also had a big lot where they let truckers park and sleep or take a break. On this night at this time it was just my dad, sketchy dude, and one trucker in there he kinda knew, as in, came in frequent enough to be conversational, and asked if he'd stay in the station and hang out until sketchy dude left. Well, after looking at the stocked shelves for several minutes, while sneaking peeks at my dad behind the counter, the sketchy guy eventually looked fed up, and got into his blue car and sped off. Cool trucker guy hung out with my dad a little longer until another couple of guys came in. To use a booth they had to eat a sandwich. I should also point out this was pretty middle of nowhere rural southeast United States in the 1970s. CB and landline was it. My dad only had a landline in the store. Dad did not have any protection or weapon of any kind. So the hours pass, and my dad had shaken off the paranoia when all of a sudden this truck driver guy in a car comes hauling ass into the lot, jumps out, and sprints into the store hollering he needs a phone. He didn't have a CD, nor did he see a phone at the other station. He also wasn't familiar with the area and my dad's station was the first place he found. Calls 911 to report that he had walked in on a gas station 40 miles back, next closest station, to find the attendant shot and dead. No one else around. And the only other piece of information is that a blue car was speeding out of the lot when the trucker pulled in. Apparently they eventually apprehend the guy in the blue car. My dad confirms it was sketchy dude from earlier in the night, and they charge him with murder and armed robbery. To the long haul trucker who waited around with my dad that night, thanks and hope you're keeping it real. Also worth adding, that apparently sketchy guy in blue car was already a bad apple who was either being looked for, or on probation or something. He was in the system. Why do you think he didn't shoot your dad? Obviously the trucker was there, but it seems easy enough to just kill 2 people if needed. Did you ever find out the creep's motive? Or did the trucker have some sort of defense weapon? Not 100% sure, but I'm guessing sketchy guy didn't want a 2-on-1 scenario. Maybe the cool trucker guy was an imposing figure. I've never asked what he looked like. Surely my dad wasn't, as he was a skin and bones teenager with a poofed up fro. He looked like a Q-tip. Maybe sketchy guy actually didn't have murder on his last list, but rather wanted the easy stick up and cash grab job. As for what went down in the other gas station, I guess shit hit the fan unfortunately. Maybe the other attendant tried to defend himself. My father didn't have any weapons, but I'm guessing some attendants kept one. Yeah, that robbery idea sounds pretty plausible. You described the creep as pretty nervous, so I could definitely imagine him pulling the trigger if something didn't go right. Seems like your dad got pretty darn lucky.